Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
Terry Lee of Green Bay is a Democratic candidate in the 4th Assembly District. Terry, welcome to Green Bay.
Thank you for having us. I love all the work you guys do. So.
Thank you very much. Your website seems to indicate that your biggest concern is you talk about your children. You want them to have a better future.
Yeah.
What concerns you about what you've seen in Madison, why you're running? Top issue?
Top issue for me among voters and me personally as a family man is education. Republicans since 2011 have shortchanged Wisconsin schools $3.5 billion, and they still haven't made up the funding. And on top of that, they're siphoning off to private schools and vouchers students. So it's a concern of mine, and because it's also, when it comes to the next generation of teachers that are coming up, we've demonized them over the past several years, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of them. And a younger generation of young applicants are not wanting to become teachers anymore. So we need to make a change when it comes to funding for schools.
The current state budget does include a significant increase in state aid to K-12 schools. It's not enough, and if you're in the Assembly, you'd push for another similar?
Not enough. I mean, Tony Evers has said for nearly $1.5 billion more. I don't know if we can go that far with budget constraints, but that record funding that they've called for does not take into account inflation one bit at all. So we definitely need to make sure that we're increasing our funds for schools overall there for K-12.
You alluded to the choice voucher program.
Yeah.
Not a fan? Would you like to
No, I would
phase it? Would you kill it, phase it back, or what?
I would probably look at phasing it out, possibly letting students finish up whatever grade school they're in, but private schools do work differently. My opinion is that it's a large tax breaks for wealthy families that choose not to go to our great public schools. And public schools are losing out. The Green Bay School District lost over $11 million. So I do support that. Also, when it comes to possibly putting something on your property tax bill to actually show you how much money is going to private schools and how much money is going to public schools.
On your campaign website, you talk about the need for local controls.
Yeah.
Does this mean you want to do away with levy limits on local governments?
Oh yeah, I think they need to be restructured. Municipalities, Brown County, and all the communities here that the Assembly District 4 represents, Alloway, Ashwaubenon, West Green Bay, and a big chunk of Howard. They want some flexibility because this is hurting slower growth communities very much. Levy limits are just really part of the overall package of local control that's been eroded over the past several years. 140 laws have been passed that have taken away, things for conditional use permits, shoreline management, mining, repealing the prevailing wage law, and also so it's troublesome that we're taking this approach of we want local control, but I believe very strongly in community-driven change, and that's where things really do happen at the local level.
The gridlock in the Capitol over how to pay for highways, bridges, construction, and maintenance, how would you break that impasse?
We definitely need to get down to business on that. We've been shelving it off for way too long. Since 2014, we've shortchanged the Department of Transportation over $1 billion a year. We have inadequate funding. Survey after survey shows that people are not satisfied with the roads and highways. And just locally here, WBAY, where I used to work as a producer, came up with a story that said the state has basically diverted $46 million of federal funds that go through the Department of Transportation for local road projects. $46 million like that. 3 million of that was for the Brown County area. So I think that's something that needs to be investigated. And as a former radio news reporter, I want to get down there and investigate good government and bad government, because I've seen a whole lot of bad government, and that's kind of why I'm running. I want to get down there and make sure that taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely. Programs work, keep them funding. If they don't, get rid of it.
Let's stay on highway funding. Could you vote to raise the gas tax, and how do you feel about tolling?
I think we need to definitely take a look at the approach of bringing back indexing of the gas tax, because it's a hard choice. And we do have a lot of hard choices come this legislative session. Yep. One thing that you'll get from me is honesty, and I will definitely look at that. But at the same time, when it comes to increasing taxes on gas.
Yes.
Or toll roads, or raising vehicle registration fees. I think this needs to be a comprehensive approach and make sure that we have listening sessions across the state to give Wisconsinites an opportunity to share their voice, because this is a very important topic that a lot of people care about.
The tax breaks, the tax benefits for Foxconn are now law. Kimberly-Clark would have been helped by a package of tax breaks similar to Foxconn that passed the Assembly on February 22nd. When should state government help private companies, Terry?
Both of those examples are corporate subsidy, corporate welfare, whatever you want to phrase the
Would you have voted against them?
Both, yes.
Okay.
It's a hard choice, yes. The Foxconn deal also dove into when it comes to not protecting Wisconsinites for workers, environmental laws. And at the same time, the Foxconn deal was a boondoggle for the state. It's not going to be paid off or break even until 2043. And I asked voters, where do you want me to cut money from to pay this foreign company about over $300 million over the next several budgets? Do you want me to cut from education, cut from transportation, cut from corrections? Where do you want me to cut? Because Republicans did not pay for this plan, and that's why it's dangerous. When we start getting to this corporate subsidy and welfare, both these companies profited billion-dollar profits, net profits. Foxconn, I think, was at like $9 billion. Kimberly-Clark posted like $3 billion. They don't need this money. And it shouldn't fall on the government to be the responsible to say, well, if you don't spend this money, they're not going to come here or they're not going to stay. This is on Kimberly-Clark for making bad decisions and basically not wanting to stay in the community where they started.
You mentioned prisons. A big question in the next state budget is Green Bay Prison is it was built in the 1800s.
Yeah,
So was Waupun.
120 years old.
Right. So but yeah, some Democrats say we should look at potentially cutting the prison population in half. Do we need a new state prison?
I don't know if we need a new state prison. A proposal now by my opponent is to build a private prison somewhere and for it to be privately leased, not exactly financial sense. But I think we're doing the chicken before the egg argument here, because right now the Department of Corrections is studying the overall facility needs across the state and where we need to possibly build a new prison. But at the same time, we do need to recognize that Alloway, where the Green Bay Correctional Institution is, has no more area to grow and to grow its tax base. Right. So currently proposed right now, if they move that prison out of there, it's an $80 million economic impact, a recent Norbert College study found. So we need to definitely weigh the opportunity of moving that prison.
We have had the tuition freeze on resident undergrad tuition at UW, in the UW system for 6 years. Should the freeze continue to a 7th and 8th year?
I'm not sure yet at this time, but at the same time, you definitely do need to fund the freeze. Freezing it just makes, and the entire goal of Republicans was to peck away at the reserve fund that was over $1 billion several years ago. They didn't like that very much, and they wanted to change state law to be able to do that. And they've been able to successfully get that their way, but the reserve fund is still maintaining quite a large amount. So yeah, when it comes to tuition freeze, I'd have to still look at a lot of the numbers when it comes to this, but we definitely do need to make sure that we're supporting the UW system, because they have a $24 billion economic impact in the entire state. They bring in $1 billion in tax revenue every year, 170,000 jobs, and we need that industry and the school, UW-Madison, and all the satellite campuses to be a strong stake in our entire state to make sure that we continue to train a workforce and get good paying family supporting jobs.
Position on legalizing recreational and medical marijuana?
Well, I think it's great Brown County has put that medical referendum question on the ballot. And I think that's great. I think we need to make sure that we can maybe even have statewide, make it easier for people to have statewide referendums and even at a local level. I definitely would support when it comes to recreational and medicinal use, but that's a very tough choice. We're getting into waters here that are murky, and we definitely need to make sure that we vet the proposal's pros and cons when we take a look at the economic development or the economic impact this would be where it comes to taxation, regulation, and making sure that people are safe. But my theory on this is that if you're already smoking, you're going to keep doing it. And if you're not, you probably got a serious job and a serious life, and you're not going to start anytime soon.
State government is spending $100 million in school safety grants. Do we also need to change gun laws, and if so, how?
Oh, you hit me with that one. I think it was awesome what they did for safety grants here across the state. My school, where my kids go, Martin Luther King Junior Elementary, they were able to basically keep people from coming through the doors. Not before. Before you needed to come through the office completely to go through there. Now you actually have to come through the office to actually get inside. So that was definitely well-meaning. When it comes to gun control, I am a Moms Demand Action gun distinction candidate. My theory on guns is keep it out of the hands of bad people. They say that guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, then let's keep guns out of the hands of bad people. I think it makes common sense. So extended background checks when it comes to waiting periods. So we've got a whole slew of things. And another big thing there for me is red flag laws. I think there needs to be a due process to be able to remove firearms from people who pose a threat or maybe dealing with some mental health issues. But that's another thing too I would want to try to strive for, to expand on, is mental health.
Healthcare. How do we preserve and maybe expand healthcare in rural Wisconsin, Terry?
Well, back in 2013, there was the Wisconsin Graduate Medical Program that provided grants and funding for that specific purpose, for getting rural doctors out into the rural communities here. So I think we need to continue to support that and work with hospital systems regionally to make sure that we do that. That also helped out with making sure that Wisconsin student, if you're a Wisconsin student, go to a Wisconsin medical school and do your residency here, you're like nearly 90% chance that you're going to stay in Wisconsin and practice medicine. That's a successful program right there that we need to keep investing in right there.
So state government has a role in recruiting and retaining these medical professionals?
Oh yeah, we're about 2,000 doctors short here by the year 2030 right now. So we definitely need to make sure we keep that coming. And at the same time, we have an aging population and more healthcare needs. There needs to be a lot more people that can get healthcare in rural and urban areas, and we need to make sure we keep working on that.
State government and Delta Dental set up a pilot program to offer dental care in low-income areas. It's a pilot program. Do you think it should be a priority in the next Medicaid budget?
Well, I think dental care is not something that really is overlooked a lot when it comes to health care in general. So that's one of the things I think we should need to take a look at. I do have to do some more research in that area, but I think it sounds like a great program so far.
Are you hearing from voters issues with caregivers? AARP says there are 578,000 caregivers in Wisconsin that provide care for family members, neighbors, other loved ones. Would you support laws or regulations that call for hospitals to recognize family caregivers when their loved ones are hospitalized?
Yeah, I do fully support the CARE Act, that's called, that they are supporting. I think it makes common sense to be some sort of certification, offer education for family caregivers, and for them to be recorded on medical chart that says this is the family caregiver. Make sure that information goes through them because they're taking care of them. At the same time, there's a lot of uncompensated care that family caregivers are giving people right now, $7 billion when it comes to that. So I think we need to look at possible tax credit that could be available for family caregivers down the road here.
And final question, differences between you and the incumbent you're challenging?
Well, I don't think it's fair that we're rigging elections. Nonpartisan redistricting reform is one of those things that's on top of my priority. I don't think politicians should obviously be choosing their voters. The Supreme Court case is one of those. Child care is a big thing for me as well. I have 3 kids, twin daughters, Kennedy and Evelyn, who are 5 or in kindergarten, and also Jack, who's 10, and he's in 5th grade. Everyone's in school now, but for the past several years we've been working split shifts, Jen and I, just to avoid child care costs. It's as much as a mortgage these days, $1,200 a year when it comes to that. So those are a few things that'll be a lot bigger distinction between me and my candidate, plus money in politics. Campaign finance reform is something we definitely need to focus on. I really want to try to bring this very simple rule down to the state legislature. If you can't vote for the candidate, you can't give or support them, because that removes state politics, nonprofit groups, all these television ads. I'd even ban television ads. Of course, TV stations definitely wouldn't like me very much because that's their bread and butter these days. But people want to change, and we need people like myself to get down there and start waving flags and making a ruckus.
Thank you. Terry Lee of Green Bay is the Democratic candidate in the 4th Assembly District. The election is November 6th. Terry, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.